Okay, presenting for the first time a new segment on the Mining Pod, Bitcoin Mining Mountain. So, a lot of times in the Bitcoin mining space, we like to talk about the boring metrics. It's kind of Mick Luxor's job down there is to talk about the hash price and things like that. And we will indeed get to that segment at the end of the show. But for those of us who are in it for the talking points on Twitter, this is your segment, Bitcoin Mining Mountain. And Colin, he did his best to try to talk me out of it this morning, but I could not be dissuaded. So we are going to
want bread and circuses and they want blood sport. So let them have it.
We are going to vibe rank the top Bitcoin mining companies out there. There's a few that did not make it onto the list, more or less because I was lazy and only picked like 15. And maybe they just didn't make it in because, it's a vibe ranking list. It's nothing more than that. So I'm going to share my screen and then we're going to go through these. And you guys just have to sit there and listen the whole time to me monologue on this. Feel free to say something if you really have something interesting to say. If you are listening on audio, we have from a shit tier to A, B, C, D. S is the top. It's the king. It's the apex mountain, if you will. A, B, C. You're doing pretty good. Like, you got something going for you. A, I'd say, is like, you're doing incredible. You're top. D, wouldn't want to be there. For my first pick, should I go from top to bottom, guys? What do you want?
I don't understand the scale. So shit is the worst, but
no, it's the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
S tier is the best.
S tier is good. I know it's confusing.
You're shit. You're not shit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
It technically stands for superior.
I was just thought you didn't know how the alphabet worked.
No, this is a common, colloquially on Twitter, this is a common way. But which way should I go? Up or down? Do you guys want me to start with the D or the S?
I think it's spiciest to start with the bottom of the barrel.
Agreed.
I will go with logo. First up on my logo list is Bitfarms. Now, Bitfarms has had quite a 2024, 2025. They transitioned the entire executive team. There was a takeover attempt by Riot. They then purchased Stronghold Digital. And now they seem to have like this huge pipeline of energy, large footprint. The only wind I'd say against them is just getting the brand name out there. I don't think that it's as quite as strong as Riot or Mara or some of the others out there. It's hard to get these names in the heads of different investors in there. And so for that reason, despite all the great things they have going, I'm dropping them on the B tier. Now, B is still great. B is still great.
Offsides.
But no, B is still a very, very good ranking.
At least A.
I agree with Colin here, except I would keep them in the B just because I wish their stock price would get them to where they actually should be.
So this is actually a perennial joke with their CEO, Ben Gagnon. Like, he's like talks about how there's this eternal September of their stock ranging between $1 and $2, no matter what they do. And then you'll see him like, in some of these chats that we're in, another miner will pump for like no reason. And we'll just be like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
See, this is what the tier list does. It makes you really think about all the things, all the headwinds, which is going to bring me.
Will thought about this so much, and his vibe rating is really just describing the first letter into a tier list. And so Kango will be a C, Argo will be an A. He's just going to follow through. B is for Bitfarms. That was what went off in his head. That whole spiel, that was a facade.
Well, Matthew, I will push back against that. Next up is Argo. The 2021 darling had all the big plans that came crashing down after too much debt. Haven't really been able to figure it out since. We love you, Argo, but we're throwing you in the D category for now. We need a narrative to form around you guys. We think that there's going to be some sort of deal with gem mining soon, so I think that can move them up. And again, a note, we're going to do this monthly, so people are going to be moving all over the place. And this is a vibe ranking, so it's Will's vibes.
Also, something to note about Argo, kind of the cuckoo bird of this bunch, because they had the Helios site that then Galaxy took control of, and now they're looking to retrofit that for CoreWeave. So that's tough to stomach.
Yeah, the Helios thing stings. I'm curious, so why is D green? Like, I don't get this. Like, maybe I'm just the old guy here, but like, why this is so
common? It's a common ranking method.
So,
Argo, you've got too much boomer for this. Sorry.
You mean logic? Sorry.
We're going to keep moving along. This might surprise you guys, but next I'm going to throw BitFufu on the B tier. Now, people might be thinking Bitfarms maybe superior to Bitfufu. Why is this? But I think Bitfufu has a lot of things strong for it. Cloud mining contracts. Claims to have 600,000 users with recurring revenue. Very strong. Also have a very tight relationship with Bitmain, which allows them to have cheap access to units. I think those two things cannot be understated. They also have a decent power pipeline as well. Recent signing in Oklahoma shows that, along with an international footprint into Ethiopia. Any thoughts on Bitfufu going to B? Yes, I get that it's Bitfufu and Bitfarms is B also.
It's a very sad ranking, very sad. Chinese miner, they're not going to make America great again. They're not deploying in the US. They take the mining machines from China, they put them in Ethiopia. We want that here. Sad ranking, very bad. Bad look for block space, bad look.
Okay, Kango next. D ranking, another one of these D rankings. Why is this? Okay, Kango, we reported on this, we broke the news around it. Seemingly a strong contender for a good pick in 2025 on the Vibe rankings. But unfortunately, I think there's a few things that are against them. That is, we don't really know what all the shareholder stuff is going to look like as they move into this transition with Ant Alpha. There's already been a lot of selling by executives in the past. Maybe those headwinds are behind us, but I think there's a long way to go to get people to trust them again. And so if you're thinking from a shareholder perspective, I'm not sure I'd be in on Kango at the moment. That being said, some things that could move them up in the rankings later: extremely strong relationship with Bitmain that's only been strengthened recently in this takeover bid by Ant Alpha. Moving right along, Core Sci and this is Kanan actually. Core Scientific's after. Kanan, I'm also going to put on the B tier. They've been picking up sites in the United States. They're doing really well in terms of vertically scaling their Bitcoin mining from manufacturing into actual hash rate on the rack. I think they're a solid B tier Bitcoin miner on our Vibe ranking. This one actually is probably pretty straightforward. Core Scientific, A. Our first A ranking. Core Scientific has had a tremendous 2024. Some recent headwinds after the CoreWeave listing didn't go as expected, but they have strong revenue. They're one of the miners that pivoted to AI HPC. Well, they basically defined that. And I don't think anyone's going to say anything about my A ranking for Core Scientific.
No, I think that maybe an S ranking if the CoreWeave deal and the retrofit pans out. But I think that's pretty fair.
The S ranking will only be for Will's top, my top. And it's going to be hard to predict which one.
I don't think it'll be that hard.
Loves AI. Will Foxy loves AI.
Cipher mining. I'm going to put them in the B tier. I thought about A, and I think, next time we do this, I think they could be in the A tier pretty easily. They have extremely cheap sites, and they've had some great announcements over the prior year. I don't think you actually hear a ton about them, and that can be to their benefit. They also get a lot of coverage in Wall Street, which is pretty nice, and they've been looking into the AI HPC deals as well. I'm putting them in the B tier rankings, however, because maybe we don't hear about them quite enough. And so I would pitch, we need more press releases. Maybe they need to get in on that buzz. Any thoughts from Nick Luxor?
I would put
the SoftBank one was good.
I would put them in A. Yeah, I think the lack of press release is by design. And yeah, I just think they're one of the more well-oiled machines that exist and one of the more sophisticated financial teams out there too, from a mining perspective. So I would put them in A if it were me.
Noted. We'll take a look in a month or so and see where we slate them. I'd say, B tier is still amazing. Next up, Galaxy Digital. I'm also putting them in B tier. I think this one also could have been an A, just based on the recent deal that they did with CoreWeave. Kind of surprised a lot of people. They have a lot of expansion plans for their Helios site, which I'm very excited to hear more about. I think I just want to see more on the execution side. They've been around the same megawatt capacity for a few years now, and I'd love to see that development take place. As noted, they do have a lot of money in the pipeline from that CoreWeave deal, and I think that they also could be going up to that A tier pretty soon here. Okay, Hive. It's going to be our first C tier ranking. Now, Hive, super strong miner, strong brand, have been around forever. But I think just in terms of scaling, that's always been the question. They've started moving into the South America sites, focusing on efficiency, focusing on creating more Bitcoin for cheaper. But I do think that by moving into South America and moving away from the US, you're making a trade-off in terms of the value of those megawatts in the eyes of capital markets. Bitfarms went the other way, right? And they sold that site and to decide to put more megawatts into North America. And I think for that reason, I put them into the C tier. Also still very strong rating in terms of our 5 list.
Counterpoint to the Paraguay thing, now they have lower import levies.
This is true. This could flip on its head if we get more tariffs. Maybe Hive is on A list next week. So we'll find out about that. This one I struggle with. I think I'm going to put Hut 8 in the C tier right now, and I'm expecting some pushback on this one. I think the recent announcement left me in a place where they were B tier with a lot of their competitors, but I need to see what happens with American Bitcoin. As of now, it seems like there was some good stuff out of it. They got some more investors in there for their new commercial operation, but it's unclear what this looks like over the next year. And I want to see more development from that team in order to understand the deal more.
I would push back and say B tier at least. I get the skepticism about the American Bitcoin thing. On its face, you're taking 100% of assets that you owned, and now you're taking an 80% stake in those. If we're really charitable about the strategic benefit there, attaching yourself to the Trump family, trying to find different avenues for fundraising and et cetera, that could be fruitful in the future. But I think that looking deeper into it, what Hut 8's really doing with this is they're very clearly delineating the Bitcoin mining side of their business and the energy and infrastructure side. And I think that there's something to be said about that. Whether or not they'll actually be able to execute on the energy and infrastructure side is TBD, but that's currently the most valuable thing Bitcoin miners own are their energy assets. So
they got the least interesting Trump on sides.
That is true. If you're going to pick a Trump, even Barron would have been better.
Barron would have got him into B just by the B alone.
I think Mac gets it.
Okay, I'm going to speed this process up a little bit, especially since we're running into some more brand names. I think Riot, I think maybe a few months ago you could have said the C because of what happened with the Bitfarms takeover. It didn't really pan out as well. But I think they do own this huge energy footprint in Texas, continues to print money, and they have a lot of interest in developing the 1 gigawatt of assets on hand for future production of AI HPC and Bitcoin mining. So I threw Riot into the B tier ranking. CleanSpark, CLSK, we're going the A ranking. I think CleanSpark is here just because of continued execution. I think there's been some headwinds on their stock price recently. In the Vibe rankings, not really taking that into account too much. We did a little bit with a few of the other ones, but I think CleanSpark's focus on just deploying more hash rate obviously pairs well with a mining podcast where we're not moving too much into AI HPC. And then I think also the fact that they now have, I believe, the most hash rate online in the United States also speaks well to it. Their efficiency and focus on continuing to develop their pipeline also is impressive to me.
I think Mara and IREN has more hash rate online than CleanSpark. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. No, I'm wrong about that. You are right. If you're talking about US based, I think you're correct about CleanSpark.
Yes, US based. So I'm going to throw Mara into the A. And this one almost slipped into the B because of their massive dilution announcement the other day. And I think maybe this would be revisited in a few weeks.
No, I know why this one's an A. I know why.
It's an A.
I attended Op Next, and Portland Hoddle gave a talk. And he's with Merritt. And then friend of the show, Parker Merritt, is with Merritt. So I get the vibe. The vibe is I think I'm picking up.
Who's friends with Will is it does help the vibe rankings a little bit. Mara, I think the dilution event might move them into the B tier later. We'll think on that over the next month. However, I will say they have a ton of hash rate and they continue to have more capital than everyone besides Michael Saylor, right? And so I think you cannot forget that is a very, very strong thing to have when you are in the Bitcoin mining game. IREN, formerly Iris Energy, also A tier. Now, the only concern I have with them that might have moved them to the B tier is the fact that they have not been able to secure an AI HPC partner to date. It's my understanding, but they do have the lowest cost to mine Bitcoin and one of the highest efficiencies out of any miner out there. They're also rolling quickly towards their 50 exahash goal. They just broke 40 exahash, and I think that definitely puts them into the A tier for our Bitcoin
when you
mining
say
list.
They don't have an AI partner, you mean an anchor tenant, right? Because they do have
an anchor tenant.
Yeah, but then they definitely don't have that. They're trying to build like a 2 gigawatt campus called Sweetwater 1 and Sweetwater 2 in Texas. I think that they could potentially be one of the sleeper candidates for AI pivots for Bitcoin miners. If they actually pull that off, that would be huge. As one investor on Twitter said the other day, they're either the next big thing in Bitcoin mining or they're like Enron. He was kind of had this like schizophrenic view where he's like, he feels like he's seeing some asymmetries in what he's looking at in the financials that don't seem to pan out with the reality of their stock price. Anyway, all that being said, super interesting company. The fact that they've expanded their Bitcoin mining so quickly, had the most efficient fleet, I think A is definitely deserved.
Yes, Colin, I love that you're buying into the S tier rankings here. I one thing that I think is a headwind for them, minus finding the HPC AI anchor tenant, is they did have to kind of roll over some of these obligations on older units, S19XPs, in order to refresh their fleet. And that's why their fleet is so much more efficient than everyone else's. They kind of got these S21s online quickly, but that did come at a significant cost that I think is often forgotten. Okay, my S tier is here, and that is Bitdeer number 1.
Oh, yeah.
Why Bitdeer? And I think that there's one easy answer here that no one else on this list has, and that is Bitdeer has access to the money printer. Tether is a significant shareholder of Bitdeer now. About 25% of outstanding Bitdeer stock is held by Tether. Tether is the most profitable company in human history. That is not a joke. That is a fact. And the fact that they have that company, it is true. You can look it up. Cost per, its income per employee is astronomical if you use that ranking as a valuation, Colin. So for that reason, and basically that reason alone, they have other things. You know, those seal miners coming out. They have a really strong megawatt capacity pipeline, and it seems like they're really focusing more on self-mining. I put them at the top in my S tier. That's not to say that they're a better Bitcoin miner than these other guys, but I think that relationship with Tether can't be understated. I'm going to drop my last one, and then let's debate. Bit Digital, I'm going to be throwing onto my B tier. I think their pivot into AI HPC has been more successful than most people were actually think it was going to be. Sam Tabar has always thrown out some interesting tweets on Twitter that we enjoy in the Mining Mafia community. But I do think for all the neglect that Bit Digital has gotten over the last 2 years, there have been some significant accomplishments over the last year that do make it a little bit more interesting than most people give it credit for. Now that concludes my vibe tier ranking based only on vibes. I will open it up to the Court of Commoners here to give some feedback.
Court of Commoners.
I was surprised by Bitdeer. Not saying they don't deserve it, but that's not where. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be Bit Digital, but I think personally, there's probably a couple others in this list that I would put above or on parallel. But I think directionally, I mean, you got almost a bell curve here, so it's good.
Yeah, the bell curve does speak
I don't
for
know
itself.
if any of these miners belong in S tier. Like, to me, that's absolute peak perfection. And Bitdeer definitely A tier. I think the more interesting thing, I mean, Tether having a stake in them to me is like somewhat interesting, but that's also just Tether trying to diversify its holdings because it has a crazy cash position.
Yeah,
that's separate from the treasuries that it holds, right, for obligations for its stablecoin.
Yeah, maybe you should just put Tether at S.
Yeah. They do have a significant mining operation.
For Bitdeer, for me, is the ASIC manufacturing line. I mean, there is...
Yes.
You know, when you said access to the money printer, I thought you were talking about chips actually at first, because this gives them the opportunity not just to source their own ASICs at below market costs, but they have the ability to scale into a multi-billion-dollar business and compete with Bitmain. I mean, if they even take a quarter of Bitmain's market share, that's a really, really juicy payout for them. So I definitely agree Bitdeer should be up there. I just think I wouldn't put any of these Bitcoin mining companies in the S tier because I think they all have their own flaws. Maybe in a year or two from now, we can look at some of the winners from this and then we can revise up accordingly. I generally agree with most of these, though. I don't think that Riot and Mara should be in different tiers, though. I feel like at the very least, they're kind of like peers with regards to some of the stuff they're doing. That being said, I would probably put Riot above Mara, actually, just because Riot, I don't know, Mara, if you're a Mara shareholder, you just get constantly diluted. And, like, you're drowning in stock issuance every single year.
You're discounting the friends, though, that Will has at the company. Also, Mara has the letter A in it more than any other company. And so I think that's what Will was. He was playing a letter game.
Okay, and that will conclude. If you did not get onto the list, come and complain to me at hello@blockspace.media.
And sponsor the mining pod. So
I was going to say, does complain mean donate?
Complain does not mean donate. Donations are always available, however. No, this concludes Bitcoin Mining Mountain. We will be back in 1 month to do another vibe ranking of these different miners. And again, if you're on the mountain, that's great. Most people aren't even on the mountain, so don't take it too personally.